Good morning, everyone. I am Shasta Gaughan. I am the Environmental Director for the Paula Band of Mission Indians in San Diego, California. Glad you could join us for our final webinar in the TribalP2Action series. And glad I was able to join this morning, although I will have to be off by 11 o'clock because I do have a conflict, so I have to be on that other call. But I'm glad to be here, especially to be able to welcome the EPA to our call, specifically Angela Sandoval. Thank you so much for joining us, and also just for the opportunity to be able to do this project through the EPA's P2 funding. We really appreciate it, and I think that we've been able to do some great work with your oversight and your assistance. So welcome, and I invite you to say a few words and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for being here today. As mentioned, my name is Angela Sandoval, and I am the manager of the Zero Waste section, which includes the pollution prevention program here at EPA Region I in San Francisco. First and foremost, I want to say happy Pollution Prevention Week to everyone. If you didn't know, this is our annual pollution week where we celebrate pollution prevention around the third week in September. So this year, though, we are marking the 30th anniversary for the Pollution Prevention Act and celebrating us working together to help tribal businesses take steps to incorporate sustainability into your daily operations that result in positive impacts for your staff, customers, the environment, and of course the business bottom line. As you already probably know, pollution prevention is a key to saving our Earth's resources and moving towards sustainability in a daily practice. I would really like to express my gratitude to our partners, the Paula Band of Mission Indians, and also Prosper Sustainability, and all the speakers that participated in the webinar and roundtable series to highlight your successful TribalP2 projects. As we navigate these unusual and challenging times, it will become increasingly important for us to find ways to operate more efficiently. This is a great opportunity to learn and share with each other. And I would also encourage you, as always, to visit the EPA's pollution prevention website for additional resources at any time. It's at www.epa.gov/P2. I look forward to hearing from our speakers today, and thank you for taking your time to further your P2 education. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And we'll now move on to introductions. And Shasta, can you kick us off there as well?
Sure, and I already introduced myself, but for those who missed it, I am Queen Shasta. Shasta Gaughan, Director of the Paula Environmental Department at the Paula Band of Mission Indians in San Diego, also the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. And actually, I also want to say happy fall. It's the first day of fall, so I hope you're all feeling a little bit of at least a metaphorical nip in the air, even though it's still pretty warm here in California. Jessica, you're next.
Thank you, Shasta, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Counts-Arnold, and I'm a Pollution Prevention and Sustainable Materials Coordinator at EPA. I'm also the project officer for this grant, and some of my work involves working with federal agencies, state agencies, local government, tribal, and nonprofit organizations. And I'm really excited about you being here to hear about Paula and Prosper Sustainability's great work. They've been a great partner, and I just want to thank them for all their hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. And John Flores, you're up. I see your name, John. You can't hide. Although I think he might have been having trouble with the audio because it looked like the audio connection thing was just kind of cycling. So we'll skip John for now. Oh, wait, are you there, John?
No, it's me. It's me.
Okay, go ahead, Josh.
So I'm Josh Simmons with Prosper Sustainably. Prosper is the lead consulting group on this project. We've been doing a whole lot of work with Paula, San Pasqual, and other tribes in California and throughout the U.S. In sustainability, in pollution prevention and energy, climate resilience, and other areas as well. Prior to founding Prosper Sustainably, I was the environmental director for the San Ynez Band Indians, located a little ways north of Shasta and John in Santa Barbara County, California. Michael Burr.
Hi, I'm Michael Burr. I'm the director of Microgrid Institute and also principal consultant for Burr Energy LLC. We do consulting work with tribes and other communities focusing on sustainable energy projects and particularly microgrid. I've been working with Josh at Prosper Sustainably as well as the Paula Band and San Pasqual and some other tribes working on a number of microgrids and energy projects right now. Today I'll be addressing some project management sort of principles that we've been helping out with on a number of projects, as well as some of the employee training opportunities we're hoping to get involved with, or we are involved with. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And Scott?
Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Brown. I'm a senior scientist with Wood Environment and Infrastructure, formerly known as AMEC up until a couple of years ago. I've been doing a lot of the groundwork with the Paula tribe and San Pasqual tribe on this project, particularly in the areas of hazardous material and water P2 opportunities and developing those opportunities. And I think today I'll be speaking a little bit on some lessons learned that we've seen on similar projects and how those apply to implementation and employee training.
Thanks, and I'd like to have a special welcome to Joe Fleming. Joe?
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Joe Fleming. I'm the Executive Director of the California Green Business Network. I'm looking forward to learning with you today. I've had the pleasure of working with Jessica before and also talking to Josh and Michael in recent months, and looking forward to working with them more to see how we can use green business as a framework to make facilities and businesses in tribal regions more sustainable.
Thank you, Joe. We're excited to have you here. And let's try John again.
Hi, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, there we go, all fixed. Okay, my name is John Flores. I'm the Environmental Director and Water Manager for the San Pasqual Band of Indians. I've been on, I think, all but one of these webinars, and I've worked with Shasta and Josh and Michael in the past, so it's a pleasure seeing everyone again and working with you on this P2 program.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody. And I'm excited to wrap up this series. What I would like to do is have each of you take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat box as well, if you can, to the group. And if you could share your organization and location as well. I know we're scattered throughout the country. That would be great. I'm going to pop up a poll right now, too, to get a better sense of who we have on today and what your role is in P2 planning implementation. And I'll keep that going while we are running through the agenda. And maybe Shasta can, oh, Shasta's not there. She typically helps us with our screaming goat. But there you are, Shasta.
I'm here. I just turned off the video because, yeah, but no, here's the goat. You see, this is what I use to get people's attention. So here we go.
There you go. Thank you, Shasta. Thank you.
That means pay attention and take the poll.
We'll have to do all our polls before 11 o'clock when you go. So as we're getting some responses, I'll kind of talk a little more about the TribalP2Action project. So this is part of an 8-part webinar and virtual roundtable series, and I'll kind of talk about all the parts of that sequence in just a moment. And so we're going to run through an overview of pollution prevention. We're going to turn it over to Jo, and she's going to share with us some information about both the national and California Green Business Networks. And then we're getting into the meat of the presentation after that of the P2 action implementation steps and employee training, and we'll wrap it up with questions. Although I do encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. If you can just type them in the chat box, and if it seems like it's appropriate at that time, we'll answer that question. Shasta, I don't know, the goat only got the attention of less than 50% of the people, but it's been a minute and a half, so I'll end the poll. Looks like primarily government agency support on here, and hopefully next time the goat works. All right, so I'll share the results.
Just scream, you know.
Yeah, next time just scream. All right, so this has been an 8-part series, as I mentioned. There have been 5 webinars. We started at the end of August, and today is our final webinar. We also had 3 roundtable discussions on 3 different topics. We started off with a general overview of P2 assessments and planning and this series and the project. We then proceeded to different topics, first focusing on hazardous substances, then moving on to water, and then moving on to energy, and then concluding today with implementation. Really, this is where we want to get to. We want to be implementing these activities and to be saving money and reducing impacts on the environment. You can go back and view any of these recordings. They're going to be posted at TribalP2Action.org. As of right now, I think only 3 of the webinars are posted, but within the next week or 2, all of them will be available for you to download, as well as the slides. And we're going to continue adding resources to the website. In addition to the slides, we'll also be posting various resources that people mentioned. And then this is hopefully going to be an ongoing thing where we'll continue to add content that will support everybody in pursuing these initiatives. The Intertribal Pollution Prevention Project, aka the TribalP2 Action Project, as Shasta mentioned, is an EPA grant-funded project administered by Paula as the grant recipient, and Shasta is the lead person overseeing this effort. It's a collaboration between Paula, San Pasquale, the US EPA, Prosper Sustainably, Microgrid Institute, Wood Environmental, California Green Business Network, and others who have really supported all the different activities we have going on. There's 2 primary components to this project. I guess first and foremost for us was really doing the local and continuing to do the local P2 assessments and action planning for Paula and San Pasquale businesses. And so we have a series of Paula businesses, including the casino. There are 4 or 5 agribusinesses, including avocado, citrus groves, as well as a vineyard, Fox Motocross Raceway, an RV resort, gas station, and mini marts, their transfer station, fleet department, and wastewater treatment plant. And over at San Pasquale, we have been focusing on the Woods Valley Golf Club. As part of this, as an extension of that, we're also doing local employee training and green teams to increase education, awareness, and involvement in these activities. And this webinar series and roundtables are part of the national training capacity building component of this project. And so you can find out more about that at TribalP2Action.org. And just so you understand where we are in the world, or at least Paula and San Pasquale, they're northeastern San Diego County, just sort of southeast of LA and just north of Tijuana. I always like to go over pollution prevention because I don't feel like it's a very common term in the industry. So it's any practice that reduces, eliminates, or prevents pollution at its source. I think, maybe more kind of common terms that I think are really the same thing are environmental sustainability or greening. So if you talk about greening businesses or greening organizations, we're usually talking about the same thing. And then that graphic on the right side is the hierarchy of how you want to really, address environmental initiatives. So you first want to start with pollution prevention. You always want to reduce the sources of pollution first, and then proceed to reuse, recycling, treatment, and then finally, as a last resort, disposal. So you can visit the EPA's website and specifically this link to learn more specifically about pollution prevention, the Pollution Prevention Act, and EPA has a ton of resources. They have grant funding opportunities, technical assistance, and a lot of guides available for you in implementing your initiatives. I also did share the link to the International Green Business Networks, and I provided the membership URL here because that actually shows which states have members in the International Green Business Network. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to tell us a bit more about California and the National Green Business Network. So Joe, I'll make you the presenter. I will try to make you the presenter. If I just make you the co-host. All right, there you go.
Okay, let's see. All right. Everyone seeing my screen here?
Yes.
Are you seeing the present mode or?
I'm seeing your backend mode, so not the present mode yet.
There we go. All right. Let me just get out of this one then. Bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that, Josh. I have, at the end of this brief talk, I do have an opportunity I saw that there's a few folks from tribal regions in California, and so I do have an opportunity for you, and I'll get to that in a second, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about green business programming, not just in California, although that's what I know most about, obviously, because I'm the director for the California Green Business Network, but also nationally and internationally. So I'll talk about that as well. We've evolved many of these programs together and kind of built our frameworks off of each other, which is great. It's a good way to do things in collaboration. So we've kind of morphed into looking like each other to a certain degree. So what I teach you about today kind of gets mirrored in other regions and vice versa, we mirror them. But what we do is we provide technical assistance to businesses, and sometimes a business can be a public facility as well. We provide an easy to use sustainability framework, and then we promote that business. After the business makes changes that saves them money and conserves resources, we'll promote that business. And then in turn, we provide a trusted green marketplace for consumers to vote with their dollars. They know that we've verified that the business is doing what they say they're doing, so they can trust that if they spend money there, they're spending money with a business that's operating more sustainably. And the idea is to give that business as many resources as possible and act as kind of a broker for all things environmental. So we might be putting them in touch with the energy utility and their rebates, a water district and their rebates. We have our own $500 rebate thanks to the state of California. But we want to make sure that business reaps all the benefits in their area. So we end up making a lot of the connections for that business so that they don't have to do it one-off with each of the different agencies. And I encourage all of you to download the Shop Green app on your phones or your handhelds so that you can vote with your dollars. This is a national app, so you can find green businesses everywhere across the country. There's over 14,000 of them. And this, you know, if all of us just spent our money with our values, we could change the world really quickly. So I encourage all of you to do that. This is what the Green Business Program looks like in California. We're trying to cover the whole state. We have over 4,200 certified businesses now, and we're growing and adding new regions every year. And this is kind of a common environmental theme, especially in the P2 realm, I think, where you think one small change by one business is not a big deal, like a business that swaps out a faucet aerator or encourages their employees to bike to work one day a week. You think it's no big deal, but you add it all together and you end up with some pretty impressive environmental outcomes. So we track everything we do so that we can measure the results. And I mentioned that we're connected nationwide. We have EnviroStars in Washington. We're working with Oregon now just recently. several programs in Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, Illinois, who also runs our Green Business Engagement National Network out of the University of Illinois. So we work with, and more than that, there's Michigan, Wisconsin, there's the New England group. There's a lot of different programs. And I really encourage you all to get in, if you're interested in green business work, to get involved with the Green Business Engagement National Network. We have a summit every couple of years. We have one that was postponed due to the pandemic, but it's coming up in 2021 in Colorado. And this is where we're able to really collaborate with each other, and we've partnered on grant opportunities and really leveraged each other's resources, and we also have a really good time. So a little bit about the certification process for businesses. These are our steps in California. Like I said, they sometimes mirror in other regions in the country. A business will register. They'll get a free, right now virtual instead of on-site, technical assistance meeting. And then a business will end up with a short list of measures that they need to implement and then know how to do so. And then there'll be a final verification, and then the business gets certified and promoted. These areas of focus, a lot of people in the pollution prevention world will recognize them because they're also the P2 areas of focus. We focus on energy, pollution prevention, solid waste and recycling, transportation alternatives, wastewater, water, and community. And these are just some examples of what makes a green business. A business would commute sustainably. They might do an upgrade to their lighting or their HVAC system. They definitely do an overhaul of their materials management in an attempt to minimize their waste bin and maximize reuse and recycling, or just completely eliminating waste at the source. They'd switch to environmentally preferable janitorial products, greener chemistries. Those are some examples of the changes that businesses make. And I mentioned the framework that we use. We have a system that was funded by the US EPA called Green Biz Tracker. And it allows each region to come up with their own list of measures and performance standards. In California, we have a great performance standards committee that works really hard to make these work for us, and we update them continually. And then we have a lot of green tips with local resources that can be customized. And after certification, we let a business know what they accomplished. We give them some of their environmental outcomes, and then we promote the heck out of them, basically. Here's some of the program benefits that we have. We have a Google ad grant with about $10,000 a month. Those of you in the marketing realm know how big of a deal that is. We can get a lot of marketing, online marketing out of that. We have a lot of social media. We have our phone app. We have a lot of events, mixers, award events, city council recognition. We do some print advertising as well. We give businesses a marketing toolkit so that they can promote themselves. And I'm just going to fly through these. We have our business directory, so you can talk about why you're green, and this is linked to our phone app. And we do a big push every year for Small Business Saturday, where we promote businesses, and then lots of businesses come up with business deals they want to offer for Small Business Saturday. Here's an example of one of our award events in Santa Barbara right before the shelter in place. And we've done a lot of work up in Josh's former region with the Chumash. They've certified a lot of different facilities there. Their tribal hall, the casino, employee resource center. And that's thanks to Mark Funkhauser, who worked with Fran Gilliland, who runs the Green Business Program there. So they collaborated on this and made it really work, and they're still continuing certifying facilities. So it's a great example of how we can get this work done. I had a conversation with Jared, who's the Secretary of the Environment for Cal EPA, and he saw the map that I showed you guys earlier, and he said, it looks like the regions where you don't have programs currently are tribal, overlap with tribal regions. So you might want to consider working with tribal regions. And I thought that was really good advice. In addition, a lot of our network in California was wanting to form an equity committee and do more work in that realm. And so we want to make funding available for green business success in tribal regions in California. We normally offer businesses a rebate, so that's something that's available, but what we want to do is get more Marks and Joshes working with these regions to help businesses and facilities operate sustainably. So more folks like you, basically, that can do this work, and we have a lot of training for training green business program coordinators so that you're there in your communities doing this work. We want the programs to be run locally. And we haven't allotted funding for this year. We hope to assist up to 5 regions and $5,000 per region. I say 4 regions because we might end up, if someone can certify more than a handful of businesses, we might give them more funding. But I wanted to make sure that all of you knew about this. We have an RFP, and we made it an intentionally easy process to propose a concept in your region, and I'm happy to talk to any of you about this. We'll select the regions based on their need, their readiness. If you have business candidates already identified and facilities that you already want to certify, that helps as well. How you're proposing to use the funding, and the number of businesses you think you can get certified with that funding. So there's a link here to this RFP. I'm sure Josh is going to make this information available later, so you can get it as well. But just in case, here's our contact information to get a hold of us. Jot down my phone number, my email, and I'm happy to talk to any of you about this opportunity. And I really hope some of you reach out to me. And with that,
thanks, Joe. Can you go back to the Chumash slide real quick? The 2 slides ago. So the one after that. I'll take credit for the tribal hall getting certified. I was there when we pursued that effort. But and I need photo credit for that picture of the Chumash flag over the solar panels. That was that standing on the roof after the solar panels got installed, waiting for the flag to perfectly flap in the right way. So it's the best I could do. Thanks, Joe.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to see if I can get back to my screen somehow. Where did this stuff go? And I just want to emphasize, obviously this is focused on California, but there's comparable programs in various states, which is part of the reason we wanted to share this information. And that green business checklist, even if you don't pursue certification, that green business certification checklist is typically available online. And and so that's a good starting point for you in doing P2 for your facility. It's going to cover the same exact areas as Joe mentioned. So start with that, and at the same time, who knows, you may end up getting certified and be able to take advantage of resources in your state to market your business and get other support. All right, so now we're going to talk about P2 implementation. And before we dive fully in, I want to just provide a brief reminder of the planning process. And so, this is the high-level overview of the planning process we went over initially, and then continue to go over for each media area. But first, you need to determine which business or facility you're going to focus on. And while we're focusing on tribes and tribal businesses, this training and the content we're developing, the concepts, the tools, are applicable to really any business or organization, whether or not they serve tribes. So, I do encourage you to utilize these and share these with others, even outside of the tribal space. So the next step is going to be about relationships and communication. So establishing those key relationships and pulling together your core P2 planning team. There's going to be an iterative process as you dive deeper into the next step, into goals and objectives, really your scope, your media area, your performance metrics. You may come back and decide that you need different relationships, or need to add some relationships, or your core planning team may need to change. A big part of this is going to be gathering information and data. You really need to understand what you have going on there and what opportunities there are to both reduce pollution and save money. From there, you're going to proceed to at least, at a high level, identifying pollution prevention opportunities within the scope that you're seeking to cover at that business, and in the areas you want to focus on, whether it's water, energy, or hazardous substances. And for this project with these businesses, we focus on energy, water, and hazardous substances. Once you identify those opportunities, you're going to prioritize and then select which ones you want to proceed to further analysis. So you may do some initial analysis on the ones you have identified off the bat, and then you really kind of try and identify which ones you're going to spend the extra time and effort, perhaps even hiring consultants to go in more depth if you don't already have a consulting team working with you on this. After you complete that initial analysis, when you go deeper, you want to also do some initial planning, get some cost estimates, identify the next steps, present those results and those initial plans to key stakeholders, although you really should be engaging and involving them and presenting to them throughout. So, you shouldn't be waiting to this point to let them know what you're doing. But once you get those results, present them to them for the next steps and their decisions, hopefully to move forward. You want to tie this all together and package it up nicely in an assessment report that somebody can digest with an executive summary and more detail following that, so that people can come back to and understand what you've done. And so people aren't going to reinvent the wheel when they come back to this initiative a few years later. And then from there, you also want to develop your P2 action plan. And that's really kind of the key step. This is the bridge from developing the action plan to then implementing the action plan. And that's really when you're going to start reaping the environmental and cost savings benefits. So here's what we're going to cover today for implementation is first kind of focusing again on outreach, commitment, and engagement. Really, you got to involve people. You're not going to be successful if you don't have the most important stakeholders and leaders involved in these activities, from the staff level to the management level to leadership level, and all your partners up and down and in between. We're going to spend some time talking about project management, both specific to this project and just general good project management concepts to ensure that your projects are implemented successfully. Data and performance metric tracking evaluation is key. You really need to measure and be able to show and evaluate in order to demonstrate that you're actually having success. And then from there, you want to communicate and leverage that success into hopefully gaining those benefits, lots of different benefits out there, and we'll go into more detail on that. And then finally, reviewing and updating your P2 action plan, and at some point also your assessments. You want to keep it fresh. Things are going to change, opportunities are going to change, and you want to kind of stay on top of that and make sure you're just continuing your momentum of progress. Following the implementation steps, we're going to go into more detail regarding actual kind of a training process or some training guidance on working with employees to educate and build awareness and involvement. So I want to run another poll, and it's only 10:30, so Shasta and the Screaming Goat are still here. Shasta, could we get your assistance for a moment as we run our second and final poll of today?
Of course.
I think we need a second one because we only had half the people last time, so hopefully we can get your attention, please, and
Screaming Goat number 2, but also my strident professor voice that says, put down your cell phone, put down your iPad, come back to the screen with the poll on it, and here's the goat one more time.
And what we're asking is, what is your biggest challenge in implementing P2 measures and achieving P2 results? And I think I included, so, let us know, and we'll also just be better educated moving forward to help EPA in developing resources to address these needs. So it'll take about 10, 15 more seconds to let people finish up. We're at 64%, Shasta, so your professor voice, I think, was really what put us over the edge. We're still climbing. Okay, so 76%, fantastic. So I'll show the results, and it looks like lack of time or staffing is the biggest challenge. It does seem like there tends to be more involvement and participation in planning activities, and then sometimes when it gets to actual implementation, I see it happen so often that, that's really what we're talking about here is, there's always a lot of effort put into planning efforts, and there's funding available. There's typically less funding for implementation and sometimes less support when people actually got to put forth the investment, but then sometimes the attention just fades. A lot of times you have these plans, they sit on a shelf. So, hopefully this guidance will also help you keep people engaged, keep these projects and these initiatives moving forward. So thank you. All right, so the first key step we want to discuss is the stakeholder outreach, commitment, and engagement. And we're not going to go into too much depth here. It's a fairly obvious concept, but I think it just bears repeating over and over again. This is something we just needs to be maintained throughout the process, and there's a balance here. You don't want to ask too much. You want to be respectful of people's time and their other commitments. So you can't expect people to drop everything they're doing and focus on the initiatives you have going on. But at the same time, you want to do everything you can to ensure that you continue progress and they're aware. So part of it is just maintaining the key relationships. So those that are involved in the planning process, maintaining those relationships and that support, particularly the leadership and management support, moving forward from planning and implementation, and then establishing and seeking and establishing new partnerships as needed. It may be that staff were maybe somewhat involved in the planning process. Maybe you gather some data and information from them, but they weren't fully engaged. They weren't fully aware of what was going on, but they're going to be key to the actual implementation of the activities that you've identified. And so I think it's critical to ensure that they're on board, they understand what's going on. Try to do that earlier during the planning process, but as you move into implementation, ensure that they're involved, they're part of the plans moving forward. So these are two pictures from the Fox Raceway over at Paula, and I think the biggest initiative we identified, and Scott, you can chime in here, was really revolved around watering. They used a tremendous amount of water on the racetrack to keep the dust down, and most of that is coming from groundwater right now, but reclaimed water is seen as an opportunity here. So, as we identify and as we're still in the process of developing the plan and communicating the results of the initial planning effort, but as we move into implementation of this, it's going to be key for us to continue to engage and empower the manager over at Fox Raceway, and then there's going to be his staff who are really the ones out there that are both pumping the water, filling the trucks, and then deploying the water out the track. But I don't know at this point, to what extent we've actually engaged the wastewater treatment plant manager, which is going to be the source of the reclaimed water. Scott, was that part of the conversation when you guys went over and discussed this project with the wastewater treatment plant manager?
It wasn't when we went out there, and the reason is just because we talked to the wastewater plant first before we talked to Fox, and we didn't realize the opportunity here till after the fact. But I would say, yeah, we've talked a lot about this after our visits. And one thing that'll be important with Fox is these guys already have a certain way they like to load up their truck and water down the track and a way to do that. So finding a way, whatever the solution we come up with to incorporate using the reclaimed water is going to be important to make it so that it's not that much more difficult for them to do their jobs, whichever way that might be. So it's important to think rather than just implementing this down from on high on them. Trying to get it so that they will have some sort of buy-in why it's important to do this extra step. Thanks, Scott.
And then I want to, ask both John and Shasta, their perspectives. I mean, I think tribal environmental departments tend to do a lot of planning activities, and I think the challenge can be then moving on to implementation sometimes. But I guess Shasta and/or John, any particular, generally specific to this project or otherwise, any particular kind of challenges or best practices or kind of guidance you would like to offer?
Sure. I mean, there's always challenges when it comes to this kind of thing, and for Fox Raceway, in particular, this is a revenue generating facility for the tribe. And so when we're approaching leadership or even the management, there can always be a little bit of resistance to having to implement new policies or new procedures that they think might slow things down a little bit, or or might be a little bit onerous to change habits. And so that's always been a challenge for us, is that folks get into their routine, how they want to get things done. But I'll say that when we point out to leadership in particular that even though change might require a little bit of money up front, it generally ends up saving us money in the long run. And if not money, then something in many cases even more precious, like water. And given the drought situation that we're pretty much always in Southern California, and concerns about drinking water for the tribe, putting together some of these procedures and policies that help us to preserve that resource for a higher and better use is a good way to convince people that if we put these practices in place, we're going to be doing a good thing for the tribe in the long run. But it can take a little bit of time to explain that in a way that makes people say, okay, that's fine. Especially when it comes to the people actually doing the work on the ground. Leadership can say, go ahead and do it. And then I end up getting our utilities director on the back end saying, what the heck, man? But like I said, in the long run, it ends up being seen as worthwhile.
Thanks, Shasta. John,
Yeah.
do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, this is John. Shasta is 100% correct. I think, trying to not only getting leadership on board, but having an earlier meeting with the staff of the other areas to get them included in the process in the beginning rather than later, so that they feel that they're more included in the process and not kind of blindsided, after you get funding to do these sort of things. And also trying to identify not just a key contact who's there, but a key contact who knows what's going on with the operations, because, the manager or whoever might be in charge may not know the details of the enterprise that's going on and really what's going on in terms of water and pesticides use and stuff like that. That might be the head groundskeeper. So identifying not only as the key contact, but a person who actually knows what is going on. There's an old saying where, there's always one competent person in an organization, and you must find that person and then fire him immediately. So find that guy before they're fired.
John, that's scary because I think that's you and me. So now I'm worried for my job. Thanks a lot.
And with John and Woods Valley Golf Club, we both kind of brought in the general manager. They had some turnover. I guess we had somebody we were working with the first half of this project who then left, and other people came in, but who had actually really good experience. So both the general manager and the head grounds manager as well, and their involvement in the planning has been instrumental, and it's going to be absolutely critical moving forward. But we're going to have to also engage those who are out there. It's not just them. There's plenty of other people out there working on the golf course and the golf club that are going to need to be involved in this. Okay, so the next key step is project management. So, you've identified these specific actions and opportunities, and really now it's become a project. You could separate each specific opportunity, each initiative, whether it's green purchasing, whether it's upgrading a pump, or whether it's, doing a full-on, maybe it could be drought-resistant landscaping. It could be an energy efficiency project, such as installing a battery. You now have a project on your hands, and certain ones are going to have greater levels of complexity. They're going to require a project management process that are going to establish expectations. They're going to maintain accountability, and also to help you monitor progress. And so I'm going to turn over to Michael Burr, who has a tremendous amount of project management experience. He's working with me, actually supporting my project management of this project, but also with San Pasquale with their microgrid project as well. And Michael, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the phases of project management.
Yeah, thank you. So what you see here in these phases of project management are really drawn from the basic framework that's been established by the Project Management Institute. This isn't something that we came up with. This is like tried and true out in the world. So these are really similar to the approach that are taken for most types of projects that have a discrete scope and that have a concrete beginning and ending. If you find yourself managing projects, it's a really good idea to get training as a project management professional. It's something I recommend to lots of people in lots of situations. You don't need to get PMP certified to really gain a lot of benefit from even a crash course in project management. So that's just a little tip, I guess I would suggest. You know, there's probably some project managers on the phone here, on the line, and they can probably verify what I'm saying. It's actually very useful to get even a little bit of training in project management. It provides, you know, clarity on the framework and some time-tested tools. So just a few comments about each of these phases, but overall I wanted to say that, you know, really, as I see it, the keys to successful project management are, you know, echoing what's already been said here, some of this: thorough, clear, timely communications, both internal within the team that's working on a project, as well as external participants and share, you know, stakeholders. It's important for a project manager, especially for the person who's kind of, you know, running the project, making sure it's staying on track, to have very close attention to detail and make sure that loose ends get tied up. I know that sounds kind of general, but it really helps to convene regular team meetings and to really closely track action items as you're working through tasks. So finally, accountability to achieving project objectives. That really translates into monitoring, managing, and reporting ongoing progress by, like as I said, identifying action items and tracking those. A project manager can help really to ensure accountability for execution of the project all the way through all phases of it. So just really quickly to kind of touch on each phase. Conception and initiation seems pretty obvious. It's where we start, right? But it means establishing the project scope and the objectives, how you're going to communicate as a team, and what the schedule is, at least at the outset, and the budget, you know, also formally obtaining formal authority for the project, and that's going to be vital for getting buy-in from key stakeholders. That's, again, these are, you know, obvious to, or important for all types of project management, but in this case, you can see how it would be very important to establish your authority at the outset to really execute a project like this, where you're changing processes and materials and things like that. So next, assessment and planning. This is everything that Josh reviewed earlier with regard to TribalP2 planning steps. So I'm not going to repeat those, but basically it comes out with the P2 action plan itself. And then implementation, as we're really focusing on here. Project management is part of implementation, but really it involves the steps that Josh just walked through. And exactly what those steps are, you know, are going to vary depending on the specific project. For P2 projects, it might be things like changing processes or materials like we've talked about, or installing new systems or infrastructure, or developing employee training and communications materials. So then performance monitoring and reporting, you know, in the context of the project management framework, that usually is about managing the project itself, you know, the process of the project, but also for P2, it really can apply to establishing metrics for pollution reductions, as well as cost savings and any other factors that you want to track, and then gathering the data and reporting it to leadership, as well as sometimes to granting agencies. So then we get to project closeout. You know, this is pretty simple, just entails confirming that processes are complete, filing documentation, things like that. But ultimately it means transferring ongoing activities and reporting tasks to the staff, the operating staff, who will be responsible for those things on an ongoing basis beyond the end of a project. So just to touch on a few project management tools, there's many of them. There's a world of tools out there, but through this project, we've actually developed a TribalP2 Action Plan template that we'll be sharing on the TribalP2 Action website soon. But there's some other, you know, sort of general market things out there. I see Josh just brought it up here, and he can touch on that. But just to touch on a few other things quickly, there's a lot of good tools out there in the world. We use Smartsheet quite a bit. It's a scheduling software, a cloud-based scheduling software that's very slick, easy to use, and helps to monitor projects on an ongoing basis against the schedule, keep things on track. There are a lot of other project management tools: Basecamp, Trello, Microsoft Project, SharePoint. I also mentioned Dropbox, Google Drive, other cloud services. The key really here is to use those tools that have the features that you need, and maybe not too much more, because when they get a lot more complex, they're kind of cumbersome to use and can get confusing. And I suggest keep it simple. If you've got a project that doesn't require a huge amount of huge team and many tasks, it can be managed pretty simply and just using file sharing software. But otherwise, those project management tools like SharePoint and things like that can be very useful for more complex projects in particular. And then I guess I should give a shout out to Zoom as well as other teleconferencing tools. These have obviously been more important these days, but we've been using them for years to manage projects that involve team members from all around the world, frankly. So that's my kind of high-level overview of project management as it applies to P2. Josh, I covered what we think we needed to cover. Did you want to delve into that template any more detail?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to circle back to that in just a moment. And thank you, Michael. We wanted to both kind of talk about it in the context of this project, but also just kind of talk about general good project management practices. And as you can see, a lot of these are already embedded in what we're discussing. So, an example of a type of project you may need to manage is over at the Paula transfer station. And Scott, you may need to talk about this a little more because you talked about it a little bit at I believe the hazardous substances webinar. But there's potentially more of an opportunity there to they're accepting green waste, and there's more of an opportunity to process it into various levels of mulch for both sale and then actually use at Paula. So just a quick reminder, Scott, of that particular opportunity.
Sure. So the transfer station is already taking in and processing a large amount of green waste into mulch, and they process it into various grades of mulch, and it's for sale. And they do quite a bit of sales. Sometimes they sell to other municipalities. Like I believe the city of Fallbrook purchased a large amount from them last year. But we were looking at opportunities within the reservation. So one opportunity we found is that the agricultural groves that are at Paula could benefit by using this mulch, and maybe that there is some synergy there. All the agricultural groves require is to purchase a piece of equipment to spread it. So that was one opportunity there that would, this is something that's already being produced by the reservation on the reservation, and it could have benefit use for another organization within the tribe. So that was the opportunity we identified there. And then that would in turn save the groves. It wouldn't have a lot of benefit for the transfer station, but it would save the groves some money on fertilizers and also in water use. It would minimize their water use.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so that, we're coming back to, I think, the relationships and involving different people as we identify these opportunities that may not have been involved at the planning phase until we actually realize that there are these cross-cutting opportunities. This is just a kind of very simple P2 action plan template. I just put a few examples in here. There's actually a lot more fields in here that I'm showing right now. And we're still in the process of developing this, but I'm a spreadsheet guy. I ultimately, some people don't love them. But I think it's not just useful for running analysis, but I think it's just a great organization tool. And so I use it for this is my primary project management tool. So when you develop your action plan, I would suggest developing in a manner that it actually can serve as a tool that you can monitor and track and progress, set expectations, really everything Michael talked about just a moment ago. And this will be made available online as well. And, kind of just to run through this real quick, the project management tool, I think, needs to set forth the high-level goals just to keep those in sight, make sure everybody has their eye on the ball, they have that waypoint, and they know what they're trying to accomplish. We're talking about hazardous substances. Most cases, we're going to be talking about minimizing cost in the realm of P2, minimizing generation of pollution, and then, minimizing, to the extent that it's applicable, exposure of employees and others to hazardous substances as well. And the process of establishing the goals is going to be part of the planning process that you would have gone through before, and we've already discussed. So I'll just kind of run through like one quick example of this is a project management tool, and it's going to cover some of the topics we're going to cover a little more detail in just a moment. But so one activity could be you at the particular business, and let's just say the Apollo Casino, researching and preparing a list of alternative supplies and products and materials that they use on an ongoing basis with hazardous substances. And Scott has asked them, or really any business they work with, to identify the top 5 or 10 things that they purchase. And within those, then researching alternatives. So having a list of alternatives that you research, you identify the price and cost, the quantity that you are purchasing right now versus what you may purchase with the alternative, and the difference in the hazmat content between the two. You also want to consider the effectiveness. A lot of times you may consider a more eco-friendly alternative, but it could be less effective, meaning you could be using more, which could mean ultimately that even if it has some hazardous materials, it could end up being as much, if not more. But from that, prioritizing that list and scheduling the procurement of those alternatives, focusing on the priorities. So this is a project management tool in the sense that that's on the radar for 2020. That's, that's in the hazardous substances category. That's how we want to kind of divvy up it for this particular business. The primary responsibility there is going to be the procurement officer, the facility manager, or managers, and facility staff really should, be weighing in. They may have some special insights regarding the effectiveness, application, and things like that you want to consider. And then you have to consider, okay, well, we're going to develop this list, and we don't want it to stop there. And that's what tends to happen is, that you finish your plan, you got this initial activity, this initial item that gets done, and then it gets lost, it gets forgotten. So with an action plan that's succinct, that just has the key activities, then you move on. Okay, in 2021, we may set a specific date. We're going to purchase those alternative supplies and products that have less hazardous substances according to that procurement schedule. And this is something too where, you may do that in 1 year in 2021, and then over time, new alternatives become available. So, you could be losing opportunities moving forward in identifying alternatives for other areas you have, or other products you haven't replaced, or other supplies you haven't replaced, or there's an even better product or supply that's come out to meet your need that's going to save you money and reduce pollution. So I like to have this where, your plan is a 3 to 5 year action plan with succinct activities in it. And to the extent that it's an ongoing thing, that you continue to have it in there year after year. I just kind of did a 3-year cycle on this one where you're kind of repeating the process, keeping the research and the list of those alternative products up to date. It's very clear who the responsible party is. Once you actually have that list, the procurement officer is the one who's purchasing it. And then facility staff are naturally going to be implementing it. That's going to be the only thing they're actually going to have in their storeroom to move forward with. So, keep it on your radar, ensure that it's being moved forward. And then another example I put on here was just an automatic dispenser for cleaning chemicals. And this is something that the Chumash Casino had been doing before, a long time ago when I was working with them. It just kind of popped into my mind when I was coming up with some examples. But researching, purchasing, and installing that dispenser, that may involve some new training protocols and standard operating procedures for use and maintenance for the staff, for new staff, and then existing staff may need refreshers, maybe year after year, getting feedback from the staff on those to ensure that they are actually effective and you've engaged them in that process. And then just ensuring that's on your radar. Like, you don't want you to install this and then 5 years you have complete turnover of your staff and nobody's been trained on how to use it. So nobody's using it. They're still going back to dumping the chemicals into the bins, using way more than they need to, costing more money, increasing exposure to chemicals. So just as I mentioned, I guess as Michael mentioned, you want to keep your project management tool simple. I have a whole bunch of columns in here, and I have them as things that would be good to track, but tracking a lot of things takes time. And so sometimes you just need like the bare minimum activity and come back and look at this list on a periodic basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or, at last resort annually, and it keeps or puts it back on your radar. And you're like, oh yeah, we need to move forward on that. Just as a quick reminder, and that's what keeps things moving forward. So I'm not going to get into too much more detail on kind of data and performance metrics tracking and evaluation. I really think the starting point for data collection is what data did you collect for the assessment? If it's in the energy space, you probably went out and got electric bills, gas bills, oil bills, fuel bills. For transportation, you may have gathered mileage. What you want to do in terms of actually showing performance over time is gathering that data at least on an annual basis and comparing what it was from one year to the next. Are you actually reducing the amount of fuel you're purchasing, which ultimately is going to reduce cost and reduce the environmental impacts? So the process of identifying what data and what performance metrics you're going to track and evaluate is part of the planning process. And at this point, you're really hopefully as part of the planning process, you've already established your data collection and gathering kind of process and database. And at this point, it's just a matter of continuing to gather and implement that data. And I would also go as far as say that the process of actually gathering and comparing this data is an actual activity, at least an annual activity in your work plan. So going back to that spreadsheet, which you can turn into a word table or any other kind of tool that works for you. Have it in there so it's something you're doing it on an annual basis, because if you can't demonstrate that you're actually improving the environment, improving cost effectiveness, then you're going to reduce your own effectiveness in the success of actually implementing the initiatives. So as kind of coming back to one of the examples we've touched upon before, these are pictures from Woods Valley Golf Club, and on the left, we're looking into alternatives to some chemicals that they're using there on site and fertilizers, and then another. And so in that case, it's kind of we covered really some of the steps you'd go through in terms of evaluating and assigning and delegating those responsibilities and tracking the progress on that. And on the right, this is the unlined channel that's water. That actually is part of irrigation, where water from one pond is moving to another pond, and we're seeing that there's likely losses of water due to infiltration because this is an unlined channel. So in this case, we're talking about possibly lining a channel or installing a pipe to transfer the water, and I think probably maybe more likely a channel to maintain some of the nature. We'll see, if that's viable. But let's say we pursue that. Well, in this case, you're going to want to track. What are the differences in how much water you had to purchase before and after you implemented this? And do they match up with your initial kind of projections of when you were doing your planning process, that advanced analysis? So part of it too is just validating your initial planning activities as well. Then you want to spend some time communicating and leveraging your success. And this, Michael talked about reporting progress, whether it's to your leadership, to your if you receive a grant for the particular activity, to that granting agency, maybe communicating to your employees through training or just general awareness to have them ensure what's going on, trying to build a sense of pride in what they have going on, perhaps through green teams, and that's all kind of a line of internal green marketing. Leveraging success and communications also come in the form of pursuing certifications and awards. Joe talked about the Green Business Network certifications that are available in California and elsewhere. So pursuing those, it doesn't hurt to self-promote. So go talk to different publications about awards they may have available. A lot of times newspapers and online publications have various annual awards that they'll award to businesses for being more sustainable. There's just a variety of things you can do in green marketing, and you may want to also have both an internal and or external sustainability report to track this. You have all the information there. You should have all the information there So how can you summarize that, make that available, show the progress, and continue to stimulate both commitment, success, and progress in moving forward with these initiatives. And these pictures are, the one on the left is from Paula Mission Vineyards, and they have not pursued it yet, but this is the vineyard. I think it's only been there for about a year now, but they may want to pursue going organic here. And then I think on the groves on the right, they have actually pursued and achieved organic certification, but I think there's some avocado groves that have not. And that's not only a marketing tool, but you can charge more money for that as well. So that's, kind of at least I guess, the double bottom line of being able to achieve environmental benefits, I guess social benefits as well, in addition to cost savings on top of that. Before we move on, I'll give John a moment to step in here and kind of talk about any challenges associated with both challenges and tips associated with project management, data and performance metric tracking evaluation, and/or communicating leveraging success.
Hi, this is John. Yeah, I think Josh, touched on a lot of things. I think the thing is just like, I could use, for example, we've been working with Josh on this microgrid project, and pulling in all the stakeholders, both inside and outside the organization, I think is key to success. I feel like a lot of people, even if a project somewhat touches on them, you should bring them in and get their opinions early and often, because when they feel left out, that's when they feel less likely to want to work with you, because they feel like they've been left out of the planning process. So it's important to foster this team mentality, even if their role is very small and minor. I think giving them an equal opportunity at the table to meet and discuss maybe some of their issues is always a good thing, because they might see something that you might be overlooking because you think their role is fairly small. An example of this that we're working on is the solar we're doing on the reservation, and it's going to be carports, but it's going to be blocking a security camera for our chief of police. So bringing him on to make sure that we can accommodate that and fix that so that he can have security cameras underneath the carports. It's something that was easily overlooked, but also easily corrected by bringing him into the conversation. So I'm just really big on, teamwork. And then as you bring people in, I think that only helps you on future projects, because they see that you're willing to work with others and other stakeholders, so that they're more willing to come to the table and help you succeed on future projects. So, and you never know when you might need them again on a future project. So always keeping them involved is key. That's really my 2 cents on this.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I think that's, really the kind of the last bullet point, the communicating and leveraging success. I mean, success begets success. So as you communicate, particularly internally, the successes that you're having, you tend to get more leadership buy-in and support for when you come requesting the next investment in a new P2 initiative that you're saying is going to have the cost savings and environmental benefits. They're more likely to believe that it's going to be the case, and to trust and provide their support for moving forward. So the final thing I want to talk about before we talk a little more about training is the process of reviewing and updating the TribalP2Action Plan, and at some point also the assessment. This is really part of, I think, good project management. P2 pollution prevention is an ongoing process. I don't think, for most businesses and most organizations, it's going to be an ongoing process. There will continue to be new opportunities. There will continue to be new challenges. The businesses evolve in the operations, perhaps some locations. The tribal community and its businesses continue to evolve. New businesses come into the fold. So monitoring and so kind of first and foremost, monitor and update your TribalP2Action Plan on a regular basis, either monthly, at minimum, I would say monthly or quarterly. The importance about this is just keeping it on your radar and keeping it on everybody who's involved's radars. So not just monitoring and updating it yourself, but working with those kind of key people who are involved with the key responsibilities, checking in with them, where are they at? And that's how I think, that's really kind of the basis of project management, is just awareness, checking in, ensure people understand what they're doing, get people on the same page, keep the momentum going. I think the plan, though, should be looked at in full, at least on an annual basis, and updated completely. And that's where you're going to consider and capture the new opportunities. You're going to kind of move on to the next steps. So pulling up this plan again, and we have a 3-year plan right here. And it may be that we've identified a new way to reduce cleaning chemicals, and so that you want to update this plan. This isn't the approach you want to take at this point, or you found something problematic about this and need to consider an alternative. And at the same time, if it was successful, or maybe the green purchasing, you're finding that every single year you're finding new opportunities to save money, reduce pollution through your procurement. Well, that's something you want to continue on an annual basis. So I always encourage people in developing any plan for any project, develop a living plan that will always cover the next, let's say, 2 to 4 or more years. And then when you do your annual updates, add that year on the back end. So we have a plan right now that covers 2020 through 2022. When you update it in 2021, well, remove the 2020 activities, and update the subsequent years of 2021 and 2022, and then add 2023. So you still have a 3-year plan. It kind of helps guide you moving forward to where you're actually trying to go with the project. You can better understand how the actual initiative or the opportunity will evolve over time, which I think is important, because you need to also consider what level of effort are you going to need and commitment of resources you're going to need moving forward. I think it's also important to kind of run back through almost the full planning process every 2 to 4 years. Go back and do an assessment again, and consider expanding the scope. The operations scope may have expanded. You may have additional businesses or other facilities you want to bring into the fold as well. So, this is just kind of the summary of the planning steps that you'll find are going to be a lot easier to go through a second time and a third time around. So it's not going to require as much level of effort. Hopefully you have a lot of the relationships and the data and information already there. And it's really just kind of building upon what you've already done. What are the next key steps? And then just ensuring you're going into enough depth to not miss opportunities that you'll otherwise miss, and just kind of doing your annual action plan updates. So, I have an action plan in the form of activities, specific concrete activities. Your action plan could be more narrative. It certainly can be in a Word document. But I think that the assessment report itself provides a lot of the narrative text that surround these types of activities, the why, a bit more context, where you want your action plan, your project management tool to really get straight to the heart of the matter, straight to the point, so people can stay focused and actually implementing specific initiatives and projects. So I just put these pictures up here. These are from the Paula Fleet Department, and I guess on the left, it was an eco-friendly or P2 practice that they're already doing. So kind of rinse. The whole process is rinse, wash, and repeat. In this case, on the left, it's a bioremediation parts washer where it uses more eco-friendly clean materials, but it also recycles it through, so you're not using chemicals over and over again to clean parts. And they also, we went to the fleet department. They do a very good job of staying organized as well. So, on the right side, just let's say kind of more of a conceptual thing related to P2 as well. Okay, and then let's move on to employee training. I'll let Michael walk us through this process.
Sure. So this is, it seems, and it is relatively straightforward depending on the HR organization that's in place already. But for the most part, for P2 projects, this is really about communicating any process changes, training new employees in those processes on an ongoing basis, as well as communicating those to existing employees. So that's really to help employees understand what the organization's P2 goals are and what their roles and their opportunities are to help achieve those goals for the organization. So really it starts with the obvious thing, and that is to establish a partnership with the human resources team, basically doing outreach and communications to get on the same page with them about what the objectives are and how you may be able to integrate some of that into existing or perhaps new employee training processes. On that point, you want to try and use existing training and communication pathways to the degree that you can. Don't try to reinvent the wheel or create an entire new process if it's not necessary. Usually it's possible to just create materials and inputs and modules in some cases, or videos, whatever fits into the existing HR organization's, training and employee communications processes. And that can include a wide variety of things, and how fancy you want to get about it, how much depth you want to get into. That kind of depends on your budget and just how aggressive, how wide-ranging your program is. So what you really want to do, though, is to make, if possible, P2 training a seamless part of what the organization is already doing for new employee orientation and training, as well as for onboarding and training and communications. So then, from there, the last 3 steps are, pretty just kind of implementing what makes the most sense for the given media that you're trying to reduce pollution around. So that's targeting the existing pathways of communication that are going to achieve what you need to achieve in terms of meeting those goals, developing and delivering the content as needed to support those training and communication programs, and then updating that content on an ongoing basis. I was talking about project management earlier. I was talking about technically a project is something that has a start and end date. For something like P2, as Josh was just saying, there may be an implementation phase, but then there's a lot of ongoing work that's got to happen. And so an update, updates on an ongoing basis make a lot of sense, just to keep it in sync and updated with what your P2 efforts actually are. So, that is something that, I think that can be done by HR staff, but it's important to make sure that there's coordination between the HR staff and the other administrative staff that is implementing the program, whoever that might be, so that there's a cooperation and a partnership in keeping those materials updated and making sure that they're successful getting the information out there. We didn't talk here about things like verification and testing, but those are things that are part of any really good HR and training program. And to the degree that an HR organization implements those things, it's really good to make sure you implement those with regard to this as well, to make sure that the information is sticking, that it's hitting home, and that it's having the results that you really want. So I think that hits most of what I thought we should touch on. Josh, did you want to add anything to that, or anything I missed, left out?
Yeah, I think, there's kind of, certainly this is a process that probably considers a large organization, and we're focusing on tribes and tribal communities, and with Paula and San Pasqual, they have multiple businesses in addition to government operations. So, if you're focusing on a single business, it may not have an HR department, and in this case, we're talking about more of like a global training for general awareness for all employees. There's certainly technical training that's going to be specific on P2 initiatives that are likely going to happen more at the facilities and shop level, that aren't necessarily going to be part of an overall new hire orientation. But we want to, part of this is to, really at the bottom, we're trying to educate them, make them aware of what's going on, engage them in the process to help them ensure success. They may identify opportunities that we have not been able to identify in terms of implementing these projects successfully. They may identify opportunities we didn't even see at all. They ultimately could identify pitfalls at the same time too, and it increases their pride too. If you're working for an organization that's doing these things, I feel like you'll feel better about it and about your job than if this was absent from what you're doing. So kind of the size and scope of it are going to change depending on the facility. In this case, is a picture of our main efforts right now are working with the Paula, casino HR department, human resources departments, on developing content for them to integrate into their existing training channels and communication channels. Their scope includes the casino, which has the casino, the resort, the spa, all those facilities and everything serving those, and the facilities adjacent to it. So we also have the Paula Mini Mart and gas station under the umbrella, and the Paula RV Resort. So a lot of different people working in a lot of different areas. You have people out on the gaming floor, you have people in restaurants, you have facility staff, custodial staff, people at the gas station, RV resorts, and so and the list goes on. In their case, they have a new hire orientation training where they spend 2 days educating new employees about general policies and information. They bring in guest speakers as well as a combination of presentations and videos and tours. And so, we're seeking to develop content, perhaps even a short video, to incorporate into that. What literature, what points do we want them to cover? Are there parts of the tour we want to have the person point out? You'd want to consider for yourself, is it appropriate to have somebody from the environmental department or somebody who's involved in the P2 planning process come and deliver that information directly, or do you want to kind of just record it and have it be a video as well? Other channels we're talking with them about, they have an email listserv for employees. There's ways we can distribute literature and information on a periodic basis through that. There are TVs in the break room. We could have the short videos. They could be some of the same short videos in the new hire orientation that continue to educate existing employees who aren't going to go through the new hire orientation with this content in it. They have pre-shift newsletters and kind of highlight meetings as well. And, they said they could do a separate training on it, but again, it's, that can happen. And certainly it's just more of kind of a time and resources commitment. How much how much do you want to do for this? But, how can you make it as easy as possible for everybody and incorporate it into what is going on? John, do you have anything different going over at San Pasquale? Any other kind of channels to communicate P2 activities or methods to get this information out there? Obviously we do a lot of social media here. So our Facebook page, we try to use our Facebook page, our Instagram, the tribe's website, tribal newsletters, stuff to get that information out about our P2 efforts here at San Pasquale. So we try to leverage a lot of that, social media type stuff with people. Yeah, and I think, John kind of brings up a good point too. It's not just your employees. I mean, the content we're talking about are the same things for all stakeholders, whether it's community members, whether it's the outside public. Stuff. Don't reinvent the wheel for every single thing. You can use and recycle the content over and over again, but just, try to keep it fresh. And as you have more successes, as you make further progress, as you track that data, it can show that you're saving money, that you're saving energy, that you're reducing pollution year after year, to communicate, give them an update, and they're going to feel more pride in what they're doing and want to contribute more into the success of the programs if they're actually seeing the results of it. Okay, well, I'm going to, kind of transition into wrapping us up here. I do encourage anybody, I don't see any questions right now in the chat box, and, we talked about leaving 10 minutes at the end for people to ask questions. So if you have any still, or, you can enter them in the chat box, you can raise your hand as well, and I can unmute you. We can discuss any of the topics here today, or really any of the topics from the entire series if you'd like. So as I kind of walk through the resources we have available, feel free to raise your hand or to type in questions for us. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are planning on making the webinar roundtable recordings and slides available for later viewing and access. We're hoping that in the future we'll get additional funding to build upon this program and continue these efforts. We all are doing a lot of work in the tribal space, so we'll have content to continue to add through complementary initiatives, and we're going to continue to work with Paula and San Pasquale to implement these initiatives at their facilities. In addition to the webinar recordings and slides and related resources, we're going to have sample plans. So the Paula and San Pasquale plans are going to be included in some way, shape, or form, which the templates that were the basis of those plans are going to be included as well. So, you don't have to reinvent the wheel in terms of developing your own plans. You can see how one's been crafted. We're going to share some case studies for all the businesses we worked with, a one page or so case study on each facility. We also want to share best management practices and strategies that we're finding that are applicable to these businesses and the topics we've been discussing. And then the resources we've mentioned throughout this entire series and other ones we come across that may be helpful to you that may come from other organizations, funding opportunities, technical assistance, strategies that have been successful, organizations that are willing to help and support you in being successful in implementing P2 at your facilities. I do encourage you to go to our website if you haven't already, or encourage other people to go to our website and sign up to our email list. I'm planning on, those who have participated will be automatically added to our email subscription list. We want to give you updates as we continue to evolve. We make these resources available. So, please visit TribalP2Action.org if you haven't already. Check out what we have going on. But I will send out periodic updates as we add additional content. I think we'll also offer, anybody else who on the panel wants to share any more information on this topic or others before we wrap it up. I don't see any additional questions. So anybody else? Okay, well, as a reminder, these are the virtual roundtables and webinars we covered in the topics. So you can go back and review these, and please share them with others. And I really appreciate everybody who contributed to this series, from all the panelists, all the presenters, been contributing to the success of the project and doing these assessments and these planning. Paula, San Pasquale, the EPA. Really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's participated throughout this series, and I hope you've gained some valuable information. And I look forward to talking again in the future.